The winning blueprint presents.
In the lab room.
The views and opinions shared on this program are that of Louis T. and In the Lab Room alone and should be taken exactly as they are given. If you are soft, easily offended, or can't listen to the criticism of your team, this program is not intended for you. This is pure, unadulterated football talk for the hardcore fan. Viewer discretion is advised. You've been warned.
You've patiently waited. It's finally here. It's the Lab Reports. It's the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm Lou. Let's get started. So, when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles from 2012 to now, there have been a plethora of changes. And you start at the top with Chip Kelly being the new head coach and this being a new offense and it's brand new and the defense has been overhauled and there's a lot of changes with personnel. But you can't help but accept the fact that this was a horrible, a horrendous, a train wreck of a football team last season. 4-12, dead last in the NFC East, one of the worst teams in the league, 9-game losing streak, yada, yada, yada. This was a bad football team. So, when you look at the Eagles and you're talking strengths, there's not a lot to pick from. Not a lot of strengths you can take from a 4-12 football team. But everyone has strengths. Eagles are no different. Let's talk about the strengths for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think Eagles, the first thing I think of, LeSean Shady McCoy. Now, I've always said that I hate comparing current players to all-time greats. Simply hate doing it. Especially when that all-time great is one of my favorite players of all time, Barry Sanders. But simply, no back in NFL history reminds me of the legendary Barry Sanders more than this man. Electrifying agility, sudden change quickness, and the speed to boot. I mean, defenses cringe when they have to game plan for the man we call Shady. And that makes him a definite strength for this Philadelphia Eagles team. And when I look at Shady McCoy, I just marvel at the things that he can do. Did you watch the preseason game versus the Carolina Panthers? I mean, a couple of guys almost lost their ACLs in that game. I was very nervous when I saw Thomas Davis trying to tackle Shady McCoy because I said, look, Thomas, we know what you've already went through with these ACLs. Please don't lose one on the field tonight trying to tackle Shady McCoy. And Charles Johnson got lost in space. That's what happens when you try to tackle Shady McCoy. He's a one-of-a-kind athlete and a definite strength of the Philadelphia Eagles. So you look at the next strength for this Eagles team, and I think Philadelphia Eagles, I think immediately of athleticism. I mean, how can you not? You look at the major positions for this Eagles team, and at quarterback, at running back, at receiver, all the skill positions, the Eagles have maybe three of the most athletically gifted players in the league. In Michael Vick, we just talked about LeSean McCoy, and of course, Deshaun Jackson, respectively. That elite combination of speed, agility, and playmaking ability, when healthy, potentially gives the Eagles a distinct advantage each time they step on the field offensively. Look, these guys are among the most athletically gifted at their respective positions in the league. I mean, Michael Vick, since he's come into the league, one of the most athletically gifted quarterbacks we've ever seen in this league. I think without a doubt, the most agile quarterback we've ever seen in the National Football League. And one of the fastest as well. And so we know what he brings to the table athletically at the quarterback position. Same with LeSean McCoy. I mean, I just talked about the things that he brings to the table at the running back position. I don't really need to go into that again. You look at receiver, same deal with Deshaun Jackson. Here's a guy that is electrifying when he gets the ball in his hands. He can blow by you as a receiver. The guy is dynamic as a punt returner. He does it all. You look at this team offensively, and those three players are the players that you have to game plan for, and those three players are among the most athletically gifted in the National Football League. So you look at another strength of this Philadelphia Eagles team, and it's the unknown right now. It's simply the unknown. And Chip Kelly brings his up-tempo Oregon offense to the NFL, and everyone is abuzz. Most don't know what to make of Kelly's potentially innovative offensive attack, but that's because most actually don't know what the offense will consist of or what tricks Kelly could pull out of his bag. The only thing that scares people more than change is the unknown. And so the unknown by default is a strength for the Philadelphia Eagles that could last all season or could fade after just a few short weeks. And so when you look at this Eagles team and this up-tempo offense that Chip Kelly is bringing to the table, we've seen flashes of it in the preseason. And look, if you really want to know what it's going to look like, you have to do your homework. And you need to look no further than the Oregon Ducks offense over the last 5 years. It's going to be up-tempo. It's going to be fast-paced. It's going to be no substitutions and all of those things. Yes, we all know that. But he's going to put some extra wrinkles in this offense. He's going to use the speed and athleticism that he has. And he's going to do some things that are unconventional. And we simply don't know what all of those things are. And so for that, the unknown is a strength for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, how long will this last? Who knows? I mean, the luster could fade off of this thing after the first 4 weeks of the season, and they could be a regular team thereafter. Or this thing could last all year, and teams could struggle making the adjustment to this up-tempo, fast-paced offense. And this thing could really be a huge advantage for the Eagles all season long. We'll see which one it is for this Philadelphia Eagles football team in 2013. So we move on to the weaknesses for the Philadelphia Eagles. And when you're a bad football team, like the Eagles were in 2012, there are plenty of weaknesses to go along. But look, I don't have 4 hours to display all of the weaknesses that crippled this Eagles football team in 2012. I just don't. I can't sit here and talk to you all day long, because that's exactly how long it would take to talk about how inept this Philadelphia Eagles team was last season. But I will say this. In all fairness to the Eagles, they had a lot of injuries. There are a lot of circumstances that had this team in the position that they were in. But it's no excuse. This was a bad football team, and they made a lot of mistakes, including minus 24 in the turnover differential. You can't win in this league with that kind of turnover differential. Simply put, nothing will undo any good you've done in a game or a season faster than the turnover. The great equalizer, or in the NFL, for some teams, the finisher. Well, the Eagles in 2012 fell under that latter category as they were in no position as a team to turn the football over. But yet, they did so with reckless abandon. A league-leading 22 fumbles, and you couple that with not forcing turnovers of your own on the defensive side of the football, and you've got a recipe for disaster. And that's exactly what you got in Philadelphia last year. A disaster, a train wreck. And this team simply turned the football over way too much. And if you're going to turn it over, you have to offset it by getting turnovers of your own. But when you don't, and we'll talk about that here in a second, guess what? You're going to lose a lot of football games. And guess what the Philadelphia Eagles did last season? They lost a lot of football games. And so you turn it over, you are going to pay in this league. And the Eagles paid the most heftiest price you can pay in this league, losing football games. And so that is definitely something that they have to clean up in 2013 in order to be a better team. And that's definitely a weakness of this football team as it stands right now. You look at another weakness of this football team, and it's simply defense in general. This defense was morbidly bad last season. I mean, when you look at how bad the Eagles were on the defensive side of football, they were a joke. Okay? I looked at this Eagles team and it was such a far cry from the Jim Johnson days when this defense was aggressive. They were fast. They were nasty. They were blitzing. They were getting after your quarterback. I looked at this Eagles defense last year and I just laughed. And I laughed. And I laughed some more till my stomach hurt because they were so bad. They were a joke. And I could sit here and explain to you just how bad this Eagles defense was in 2012, but it wouldn't do it any justice. So what I'll do is I'll just allow you to see how bad this Eagles defense was. Numbers, they simply don't lie. Wow. Ouch. Yikes. Wowzers. Really? Okay, that's it. I quit. Okay. I don't really quit. But it seemed like the Eagles defense did last season. But look, that's besides the point. This is a bad defense, or at least it was, and that's why they overhauled this thing. New defense, 3-4 defense coming this year, new personnel, a lot of different changes. This team was allergic to tackling last season. You can't be allergic to contact and tackling in the National Football League. And that's what they do in this game that we love so much called football. They tackle people, and the Eagles did not do that last season. And so, tell you what, if the Eagles are going to rectify this ship in 2013, they're going to have to be better defensively. That is for certain. So you look at another weakness on this Philadelphia Eagles football team, and it was the offensive line. Now, granted, you got to take this one with a grain of salt. You look at this Eagles team, and they had a plethora of injuries. You start out with Jason Peters on this offensive line, one of the better left tackles in the league, gone right away before the season even gets underway. And right there, that set off a chain of events that led to the Eagles being tragically bad on the offensive line. This offensive line was an atrocity in 2012, mostly because of injuries, but no excuses for what the Eagles put on the field in 2012. They surrendered 48 sacks, fifth most in the league. They led the NFL with 118 quarterback hits. Only two other teams in the league even allowed their quarterbacks to be hit over 100 times. So if your offensive line doesn't protect, you can't win in the trenches. You won't score points. And the Eagles only scored 17.5 points per game, which equals out to 29th in the NFL last year. That simply isn't going to get it done. And it didn't get it done last season. You can't score 17 points and think you're going to beat many teams in this league. You just can't do it. And if your offensive line isn't protecting up front, we all know it starts up front in the trenches, both offensively and defensively. If you're not protecting up front, you do not have a chance in this league. And the Eagles did not have a chance last season. So we go from weaknesses to camp battles in Philadelphia. And when you're a 4-12 team, there are camp battles everywhere because things have to change. You can't have the same thing going on that you had the year before. And so with this team and the turnover on this roster, there are a lot of changes to be made. So there are a lot of camp battles brewing with this Philadelphia Eagles team. Let's talk about the camp battles in Philadelphia. So the most publicized camp battle probably in the league this year has been the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback battle. And you look at this battle between Michael Vick and Nicholas Foles, and this is really, to me, not a battle at all. You think of Chip Kelly and this up-tempo, up-pace offense, and I think of a very athletically gifted quarterback at the helm. Well, Nicholas Foles, Michael Vick, Nicholas Foles, Michael Vick. Is there even anything to talk about here? If you've watched the preseason, you've seen that Michael Vick has far and away ran away with this competition. He has been the better quarterback. He is a better fit for what Chip Kelly wants to do. Nicholas Foles looks uncomfortable. He looks awkward in this offense. He's not a scrambling quarterback. He doesn't threaten the defense with his speed and athleticism. I don't know why this is even a quarterback competition. I guess he just wants to push these guys, make them earn the job. I have no problem with that. But at the end of the day, Michael Vick is the right quarterback for this system and this football team where they are right now, and he's going to be your week 1 starter. Now, as we all know, Michael Vick is prone to injury, does not play in 16 games in a season, and so at some point, Nicholas Foles is probably going to have to play. Not probably, he will have to play in 2013. The question isn't if he will play, it's when will he have to suit up as the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. But come week 1, Michael Vick is going to be your man. You look at another camp battle right now, and it's the starting cornerback position. And this is what I call a 3-for-2 special. Most times, and in most cases, I use that when referencing making a roster. 3 players for 2 roster spots. But in this case, we're referring to the starting cornerback position. Both positions are available as the Eagles went out in free agency and got cornerbacks Kerry Williams and Bradley Fletcher, as this cornerback position was a mess last year. And so you get those 2 guys coming in from free agency. And also, you have a diminutive corner in Brandon Boykins, who the Eagles drafted a season ago. He's thrown his name in the hat as well and performed really well in this offseason. And so he wants a chance to start at the cornerback position as well. And so you look at what the Eagles have out there. This was a bad position for them a season ago. Guys struggled mightily, and so change was necessary. They go out, they get Bradley Fletcher, they go out, they get Kerry Williams from the Super Bowl winning Baltimore Ravens, and they're looking to upgrade this cornerback position. But Brandon Boykins, a guy that has been looked at as a slot corner because of his size, a guy that's about 5'8", 5'9", he wants to play outside like he did at Georgia when he was in college, and he excelled at that. But this is the NFL. I don't know if a guy that small can hold his own outside on that island. Well, we'll see. He's put his name in the hat, and he's performed really well. Going to be hard to keep Brandon Boykins from getting one of those starting positions. But I think at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, the Eagles didn't give Kerry Williams all of that money for him to just run his mouth like he's done thus far and not start outside at cornerback. I thought early on that your best corner was Bradley Fletcher. I mean, even in that Patriots game when he gave up all those passes, he was right there. It was just Tom Brady simply being Tom Brady. And there was nothing Bradley Fletcher could have done any differently than what he did in that game. He played some really good coverage. It was tight. He cleaned up any messes that were made. When he wasn't able to stop the receiver from catching the ball, he made a tackle. And so I like Bradley Fletcher. I think he's played really well up to this point, and I think he's going to start as well as Kerry Williams, and I think Brandon Boykins is still going to be your slot corner in Philadelphia. And I think that's probably the way it should be. You look at the next camp battle in Philadelphia, and we're talking about another 3-for-2 special. And look, we're talking about the safety position now. And do you see the theme here? We're still in the secondary. We're talking about camp battles, but we're still in the same portion of the field. We just talked about the starting cornerback position. Now we're talking about the starting safety positions. And this Eagles team, they were bad defensively. They were bad in the secondary, and changes had to be made. They went out, they got more free agents. Much like the cornerback position, they did the same thing with the safety position. They went out, they got Patrick Chung. They went out, they got another safety in the form of Kenny Phillips from the New York Giants. Patrick Chung is a guy that Chip Kelly is very familiar with. He coached him in college at Oregon. I think he's a guy that's going to lock up one of those safety positions. And so I really think the battle is between Kenny Phillips and Nate Allen for that other safety position. And Kenny Phillips has been banged up, and that's a trend with him. I talked about this in the What's New In segment for the Philadelphia Eagles. Kenny Phillips is a guy that is always banged up. When he's healthy, he's a very effective playmaking safety at times. But the problem is when he's healthy, and that's not very often. And so I could easily see Nate Allen, just because of him being able to get the reps, being able to play and show what he can do, think he's going to end up winning that starting safety position across from Patrick Chung. And I think Allen and Chung are going to be your two starting safeties come that first Monday night matchup versus the Washington Redskins in week 1. You look at another camp battle, and it's for backup running back. We know who the starter is. It's unquestioned in Philadelphia. That's LaShawn Shady McCoy. But I think that this backup competition at running back has been very compelling in the preseason. I've seen Chris Polk, a guy that was undrafted a season ago, get a lot of touches, and early in his preseason at that. And so that kind of surprised me because I thought that the Eagles felt like Bryce Brown was a very talented guy that they were going to try to get the football to more in 2013. His only issue was fumbling the football. I mean, we talked about leading the league in fumbles with 22 last year. Bryce Brown was a huge part of that. This guy could not take care of the football. He was a fumbling machine. And he's got to be better at that. He can't play if he can't hold on to the ball, but he's a very talented player. And so I expected Bryce Brown to be the backup. I've seen Chris Polk get a lot of carries early on. And also, they went out in free agency and got Felix Jones. And so I thought he would have a chance to compete for backup carries. But Felix Jones simply looks his age. Wait, he's not that old. Okay, but he looks like he's about 45. And he's playing right now like he's about 45. And so he's not even in the mix anymore. This is really a two-man race between Chris Polk and Bryce Brown. Ultimately, I think Bryce Brown is the more talented of the two running backs. I think he gives you more out of this backfield. I think he's a guy that can really pick up where Shady leaves off when he's not in the game. And so I think Bryce Brown is the guy you got to go with as your backup running back. Now, look, if he fumbles the football, if he's not doing what he's supposed to do, picking up blitzes, catching it out of the backfield, if he's not doing all the things that separates him from Chris Polk, if he's fumbling the football, he's got to sit down, and Chris Polk has to be the backup running back. But right now, I think that position belongs to Bryce Brown. So we go from camp battles to rookie watch. And I'm just going to gloss over these rookies quickly, and then we're going to move on. So you look at the list of rookies that the Philadelphia Eagles selected in the 2013 NFL Draft, and it's 7 different draft picks, and they chose to target different areas on this team that they felt needed to be addressed. And we talked about the struggles of this offensive line, and again, if you can't win up front, you can't win in this league. And so it was imperative that the Eagles addressed their offensive line woes. And so it's no secret, and it's no wonder why they selected with their first round draft pick offensive tackle Lane Johnson out of Oklahoma. Here's a guy that to me was the most athletically gifted, and here we go talking about athleticism again. Ex-tight end, converted to offensive line in college at Oklahoma, played both left and right tackle and excelled at both at Oklahoma. Here's a guy that can move people, but even more so, much like Jason Peters on the left side, is very athletically gifted. And he can run, and he can get up the field, and he can get to that second wave, that third wave, and really open up some really big running avenues for the likes of Michael Vick, LaShawn Shady McCoy, Bryce Brown, and other guys on this football team. And so you look at Lane Johnson, he fits what a Philadelphia Eagles player looks like. He fits more so, and probably more importantly, what a Chip Kelly offensive lineman looks like. You look at their second round pick, tight end Zach Ertz out of Stanford. This is just Chip Kelly trying to infuse more athleticism. You look at Brent Selleck, he's a good tight end, he's a solid tight end, he doesn't scare you athletically. Zach Ertz is a guy that split out wide at Stanford at times at tight end. He poses matchup problems for defenses, and they're going to try to use him in a multitude of ways, and so it just fits what Chip Kelly wants to do offensively. You look at their third round selection, defensive tackle Benny Logan out of LSU. This team needs to get bigger, stronger, faster up front. Everyone talks about Chip Kelly's offenses at Oregon, but his defenses were just as good as his offenses were. And it was because they were big, They were fast, they were strong, they were athletic. And Benny Logan fits that mold up front as a defensive tackle coming out of LSU. He's going to try to help turn this defense around in 2013. You look at 4th round selection. Quarterback Matt Barkley out of USC. This one really didn't make a lot of sense for me when I think about Chip Kelly and his offense and the way it's structured and the way it's ran. I didn't think that Matt Barkley really fit what he was trying to do. But in his schemes, a lot of times it requires for the football to come out quickly. Matt Barkley can do that. And I think that a lot of people looked at this pick as a head scratcher, like, hey, what are they doing here? But maybe the Eagles are looking at this as a pick down the road that can benefit them, maybe by shining up Matt Barkley, making him look good, and possibly shipping him off somewhere for picks down the road. Teams do that now, and so we'll see what Matt Barkley can bring to this football team, if anything, here in the near future, because he will not help this team in 2013 at all. You look at 5th round selection, safety Earl Wolf. Here's a guy that is going to compete for a roster spot. Don't know if he's going to make this roster or not. Eagles have some question marks in that secondary. He might be a guy that can help this football team. He'll definitely have to provide some depth on special teams, and he'll be a guy that if he can play and they feel like he can help them and he's picked up the defense fast enough, maybe he's a guy that can stick around on this roster and not be on the practice squad. You look in the 7th round, and the Eagles had 3 selections. Defensive end Joe Kruger out of Utah, cornerback Jordan Poyer out of Oregon State, and defensive end David King out of Oklahoma. I look at Joe Kruger, and I think he's a raw, unfinished product right now. Big guy, 6'6", out of Utah. His brother is in the league right now, Paul Kruger, in Baltimore, and I just felt like he could have used more seasoning at Utah. I didn't think he was ready to come out yet. He's got all the physical gifts you're looking for, but it's just really not a finished product right now. He needed to be sculpted some more. And so I don't know if he's ready to really help this Eagles team right away. We'll see if they can mold him into what they want him to be on this football team. But right now, I don't know if he can help this team. You look at Jordan Poyer as a cornerback, I think he can help this team. I think he will help this team in 2013. He can help them in the punt return game if they need him to. He can also help them out at the cornerback position, and I feel like he's a guy that they're going to have to count on at some point in this season to play some cornerback for them. So I expect him to be on this roster and help this football team in some form or capacity. And you look at David King. To me, he was a iffy pick at best at the end of this draft. I don't see him making this roster, but then again, you never know what can happen. If he impresses the coaching staff, he can make this roster. I've seen him in the preseason, haven't been overly impressed with what I've seen, but then again, I don't know what he's doing in practice, and I don't know if they feel like he's a great fit for what they're doing. Obviously, they drafted him. They want to work with him. We'll see if David King cracks this roster. So we go from there to my favorite part of Lab Reports, the experiment. So we've arrived at the experiment. And I entitled this one, The New Chip on the Block. And so I thought it was only fitting because Chip Kelly is a new head coach in the National Football League, and he's bringing his Oregon shenanigans to the league, and he's going to try to revolutionize the way they do things. And I'm anxious to see what the new chip on the block. He's the new kid on the block. What is he going to do? How is he going to infuse his personality and his coaching style into the National Football League? Is he going to integrate it well, or is this thing going to blow up and he going to fall flat on his face? We'll see. But let's get to the experiment and talk about the new chip on the block and his Philadelphia Eagles team. So we start with the research question. Can Chip Kelly's up-tempo Oregon offense excel in the NFL enough to translate to wins in the NFC East? This team was the least of the teams in the NFC East a year ago at 4-12. It's no secret. They were the basement dwellers. And so, look, he can do all the running around and razzle-dazzle and up-tempo, fast offense he wants. If this team isn't winning games, if this isn't translating to wins on the field, nobody cares. Nobody cares. It's all about wins in this league. That's the bottom line. And if you're not winning games, nobody cares that your offense is fast and you're getting plays off in less than 15 seconds. Nobody cares that you're number 1 in the league in passing offense. Who cares if you're 5-11? And so they got to win. Do the Philadelphia Eagles. So we'll see if his up-tempo offense translates to wins on the football field. You look at the hypothesis. If Chip Kelly and Michael Vick can make beautiful music together on the offensive end, combined with a resurgence from this new Eagles D, then the Eagles can surprise the league and contend in the NFC East. Look, a hypothesis is an educated guess. Do I think that the Eagles can contend and compete in the NFC East? Of course I do. Everyone has a shot this time of year. But if this offense is what they think it's going to be, that's one thing. But this defense has a long way to go. And I always feel like when you make a switch in general from a 4-3 defense to a 3-4, not so much a 3-4 to a 4-3, but when you make a switch from a 4-3 to a 3-4 defense, there's 1 year, that first year, where you're going to struggle. And it's a mandatory paying your dues and switching because you don't have the personnel. When you switch from a 3-4 defense to a 4-3 defense, you've got the personnel on your team already to make that switch. You've got 2 defensive tackles that you probably feel comfortable about. You can slide those outside rushing linebackers down to defensive end. It's not a hard transition to make. But when you're making the transition from 4-3 defense to 3-4 defense, all of a sudden those guys that had their hands in the dirt, they got to stand up. Like a guy like Trent Cole, he looks lost in space because he's not used to having his hands out of the dirt. It's going to be a transitional phase is what I'm trying to say. This defense is going to be lagging behind this offense. That's where they're going to win football games in 2013. This defense is going to have to step up. We'll see if they're up to the challenge. But if this offense is on par with what a lot of people think they could be and what Chip Kelly envisions this offense being, and if this defense is able to speed up that learning curve that I think they're going to have to endure, maybe, just maybe, the Eagles could surprise some teams and get it done in the NFC East. We'll see. Materials needed. Healthy Vic. Look, that's no secret. The Eagles need Michael Vick to stay healthy. They do not want to see Nicholas Foles running this offense. That's just the way I feel. I don't think they can be a very effective offense if Nicholas Foles is at the helm. Not the way they want to run this thing. He can run this up-tempo offense. We've seen him do it in the preseason. But he doesn't pressure the defense like Michael Vick will. He doesn't have that element of getting out of there and running and hurting you with his legs. And so I think the Eagles would love it if they could have a healthy Vic. Action Jackson. Look, Deshaun Jackson is one of the most electrifying players in the National Football League. When his head is screwed on straight and he's focused, the guy is one of the most explosive players in the league. He can give it to you as a running threat. We know what he can do as a receiver, but he can also hand you a problem in the form of special teams punt returner as well. And so when you get Action Jackson, you get a problem on your hands. The Eagles hope that he's a huge problem in 2013. The real McCoy. Look, Shady McCoy is definitely the truth. He's definitely the real deal. And if he is the real McCoy, he suffered a concussion about midway through the 2012 season and really wasn't himself the rest of that season. And so if Shady McCoy is the real McCoy in 2013, the NFL will be put on notice as the Eagles will have one of the most dynamic backs in NFL history unleashing his talents on the league. Yes, I just said that. Man, I just said that. Okay. Offensive lifeline. Look, the lifeline, the heartbeat of any team is the offensive line, the defensive line. Well, the Eagles need this offensive line to be the lifeline of this football team, offensively especially. So the offensive lifeline is this offensive line getting back to the basics, doing all the fundamentally sound things right, having good technique, staying in front of their man, actually blocking and protecting their quarterbacks and running backs. It'll be interesting to see if Jason Peters comes back and is as dominant as he was before the injury. It'll be interesting to see if Lane Johnson is the athletic marvel that I think he is. It'll be interesting to see if this Eagles offensive line can get back to the basics and be the lifeline of this offense. You look at defense. You rolling or what? And that's the question I have. Because I just said that I think the Eagles defensively is the wild card in this team. And we'll talk about that here in a second. But that's the question I have. Defense, you rolling or what? Are you going to help this offense out? Or are you just going to stand back and watch them have to put up 35 points a game to win? So defense, that's my question to you. You rolling or what? We'll see. Chip control. 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 Chip has to have this team under control if they're going to win in 2013. Simply put, does Chip Kelly have what it takes to manage 53 guys in the NFL? This isn't college. You can't motivate these guys with the same tools you used in college. You got to come with something else. Can he motivate 53 guys to be on the same page and not just focus in on the offense, but focus in on this team as a whole? Special teams, offense, defense, everything. Can he get this group of guys to play together and win football games? We'll see if Chip has control over this Philadelphia Eagles football team. So now we move on to data. And these are the things I feel the Eagles need to have happen for them to win in 2013. So we look at the data. Michael Vick needs to play in 14 to 16 games. Okay, that's asking a lot of a guy that is routinely injured every year. Doesn't matter what the year is, what the circumstances are. Vick is going down, and he's going down in a heap. And so 14 to 16 games, asking a lot, but that's what the Eagles need if they're going to win in 2013. 3,500 passing yards, 23 to 27 touchdowns, 13 total turnovers. That's a big number because if he can keep the turnovers down, he can be one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the league. When you get dynamic Michael Vick, a lot of times you get turnovers. And so he has to be the dynamic Michael Vick. He has to give the Eagles the Vick experience, but without the turnovers. So we're talking interceptions and fumbles, 13 total. Yeah, that's a pretty low number, but he's going to have to be very disciplined with the football. 61% completion percentage for Vick. So we go on to Deshaun Jackson. 60 to 65 catches for 1,125 receiving yards. That's a lot of yards per catch. We're talking about over 17 yards per grab. But when Deshaun Jackson is on, that's nothing for him. 9 to 11 total touchdowns. And when I say total touchdowns, I don't care how you get them. I don't care if it's on an end around. I don't care if it's on a wide receiver screen. I don't care if it's in the punt game. 9 to 11 touchdowns for Deshaun Jackson. He needs to set the league on fire in 2013 if the Eagles want to win games. Cooper and Avant, because I feel like with the injury to one of the Eagles' young and upcoming stars in Jeremy Maclin, you got big shoes to fill there. I don't think one guy on this team is going to be able to fill them. But I think a combination of Riley Cooper and Jason Avant can do the trick if these guys can stay healthy and be consistent football players. And so I think those two need to combine for 90 to 105 catches, for 1,280 to 1,500 receiving yards, and 4 to 7 touchdown grabs. If they can do that, if they can be a solid duo together, I think the Eagles will be just fine with the absence of Jeremy Maclin. You look at Selleck and Ertz, because I don't expect one of these guys to take all the starting snaps. I think Brent Selleck is your starter early on, and I think Zach Ertz overtakes him as the season progresses. And so I look for these guys to combine to do some damage for this Eagles offense. 75 to 80 catches between the two, 770 to 890 receiving yards, and 6 to 8 touchdowns combined for these two. The tight end is the quarterback's best friend after the running game. These two need to be Michael Vick's best friend and his safety and security blanket, especially in the red zone and on third downs when Vick needs someone to throw the football to. All right, so we get to LeSean McCoy now, and I think he has to stay healthy first and foremost, but 250 to 275 carries for 1,350 to 1,450 rushing yards, 450 to 540 receiving yards, and 15 to 20 touchdowns total. Look, the Eagles need to be seeing LeSean McCoy doing this a lot this season. If he's not doing that, he's not scoring touchdowns, you're not winning football games. It's really simple. As he goes, this Eagles offense will go. And that's why he made the comment, hey, I don't care who the quarterback is. Because he feels like either way, I'm going to get mine. I'm going to ball out. And that's the attitude he needs to have. The Eagles need to make sure they feed this guy the football, get him the ball in space, and allow him to work. Backup running backs, I feel like they're going to have to play an integral part in this offense because, look, when you're running this up-tempo offense, guys are going to have to be able to stay in the game. And so if Bryce Brown starts a possession and they get going with this up-tempo offense, he's going to have to play that whole possession. And that might be 7 to 11 plays. Who knows? And so the backup running backs are going to be very important in this offense. You run in an up-tempo offense, guys are going to get tired. These backup running backs are going to prove very huge in this season. Another 150 to 175 carries for these guys for anywhere between 740 to 890 rushing yards, and another 270 to 330 receiving yards for a total of 5 to 8 touchdowns. So these guys are going to have to contribute in their own right in 2013 as well. You look at the Eagles defense, and they got to step up. And I talked about this at great lengths. We'll talk about it some more here in a second. But this Eagles defense has to step up in 2013. They cannot be the weak spot and the weak link of this team. They got to step up. And this is what I'm looking for from this defense. Force 27 to 30 turnovers, 39 to 43 sacks, 22.1 points per game given up. And look, when you give up the amount of points that the Eagles gave up last season, and they gave up well over 27 points, you got to be able to bring that number way down. If they can give up 22 points a game, this Eagles offense, I think, is going to be dynamic. They're going to score more than 22 points a game. If you can limit the opposing team to less than 24 points, which 22.7 points is less than 24, I think the Eagles are going to have a shot. Not necessarily win, but have a shot. And that's all you can ask for in this league, to win games. And so look for the Eagles to need to keep their opponents down. 22.7 or 22.1 rather is what I see them needing to be able to give up. 7 to 9 plays of 40 yards allowed. I talked about that earlier with how many big plays this team gave up. And you can't give up big plays in this league. You give up chunk plays, you're going to give up points. You give up points, you're going to lose games in the National Football League. So now we go to the independent variable. The defense is the wild card for the Philadelphia Eagles in 2013. If the defense bypasses the mandatory year learning curve from switching defenses, then this Eagles team can compete in 2013. If not, then Chip Kelly's express offense will have to carry the load, and that might be a task that is too daunting for this team that is in transition. Look, you can't put everything on this Eagles offense. The onus can't simply be on them to outscore opponents. They're not good enough yet to do that. They got to find ways defensively to slow teams down. Maybe force some turnovers. You know the turnover is the great equalizer. Well, use it to your advantage. Get turnovers. That is the independent variable. This Eagles defense. A lot hinges upon this Eagles defense being able to get it done in 2013. Dependent variable. The Eagles offense will be the backbone of this team if Chip Kelly is to be successful in Philadelphia in year one. The key will be minimizing mistakes and wearing down defenses late in the game with their up-tempo style. Their conditioning will be key and probably their best shot to outgun defenses, getting them gassed and then exploiting them and potentially winning shootouts. Look, I don't expect this Eagles defense to really be a dominating force in 2013. So what I'm essentially saying is this Eagles offense is going to have to step up and outscore some teams. Beat teams 35-31, 34-30, 37-33. They're going to have to outscore some teams. And they're the dependent variable because this team is going to depend on this offense. As much as the defense is going to have to step up, this offense is going to have to be consistent. That's a must, and that's why this offense is the dependent variable. So we go to the constant for the Eagles, and it's athleticism. I've already talked about it. I really don't have to go into it much more. This team is athletically gifted. Vic, McCoy, Jackson, Peters, Lane Johnson, they're athletically gifted on the offensive side. They have to use their athleticism to their advantage. So we go from there to the conclusion. And every experiment has a conclusion. You do all of this to say this. We've given you the hypothesis. I've given you the research question. Here's the conclusion. Look, Chip has come in and changed everything. The locker room, the diets, the offense, the defense. But the fact of the matter is, it's not going to amount to many victories in 2013. I just don't think it is. Switching defenses requires 1 year of struggle. And from going from that 4-3 to that 3-4, I think is going to give the Eagles at least 1 year of problems. So the distractions with the Riley Cooper situation, the quarterback competition, as well as the injuries that the Eagles, and they've already sustained some very substantial injuries. It's going to be too much for a first-year college coach to juggle as the Eagles will finish 4-12 once again in 2013. Look, don't kill me. I'm just the messenger. And so, hey, 4-12 is what I see from this Eagles team. You may not like it, but I think that this defense is going to struggle. I think this offense is going to do some damage, but not enough. And I think this Eagles team, they're going to make mistakes. It's the first year for Chip Kelly. You've got a lot of injuries already. Jeremy Maclin already went down. Aurelius Ben. You've got a lot of injuries already on this team. You've got a lot of outsiders coming in. Not a lot of cohesion. There's a lot of things that are going to stop the Eagles from winning in 2013. And I see this team as a 4-12 football team in 2013. So that's the lab reports for the Philadelphia Eagles. See you next time when we'll be talking about the New York Football Giants. Have a good one. See you next time.